സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യാലോ അല്ലേ?
ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട് ചേച്ചി. സാർ കേൾക്കുന്നുണ്ട്.
ഓക്കെ, സാറ് സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്തോട്ടെ സാർ.
So, respected Dr. Anuradha, Dr. Judy, and my dear friends, first of all, I big thanks to Dr. Judy giving me this opportunity to spend some time with all of you and share a few thoughts on copyright and plagiarism issues in academia. Thank you, madam, for the warm introduction about myself. I have been asked by Dr. Jodi to talk to you on copyright and plagiarism issues in academia, and in the next 1 hour I have demarcated these two topics justifiably into two components. We will look at it at length. As scholars, as faculty, as students, day in and day out, you will be handling all these types of resources. If you look at the avenues of publication that you have to handle on a day-to-day basis, you are looking at journal articles in books, newspapers, commentaries, different types of reports, theses and dissertations, books, book editorials, book sections or book chapters, book reviews, national papers, notes. It can be lab notes, it can be different other types of notes, popular publications in magazines, etc. Then blogs, wikis. Then of course we have the multimedia sources, which includes audio and video and other types of sources. Then we have the broadcasting system. So an umpteen number of rather a plethora of resources are there around you, and when you are handling them, you have to exercise utmost caution regarding its copyright. Copyright basically means the legal right given to the author, which is an exclusive right on the intellectual content of that original work. That is the idea behind it. Through this, basically the copyright holder, or rather the owner of that copyright, can control the reproducing or copying of that particular work. That is the idea behind it. Every country has a law behind this. This is a legal protection that is given. This copyright protects the authors or the copyright holders, as the case may be, and it prevents illegal copying or illegal duplication or illegal multiple reproduction of such publications. That is the idea. And why is it required that historically this was given? Any publication, that is the reason all behind exploit. Unless they copy it and reproduce it and do whatever they want with it, then I will be demotivated. So, in order to basically deals with the royalty that authors should receive out of the sale of publications, or licensing aspect between the author and the publisher and the seller, or reproduction or multiple printing or distribution, aspects such as adaptation, let us say adaptation into a different format, or translation of that publication. Then if it is into a different adaptation, whether it will allow for public performances, or whether it can be telecasted, or whether it is possible to do broadcasting of that material. So such finer aspects are covered under the economic rights within the copyright schedule law. And one aspect of this part is that it can be transferred or reassigned. Let us say as an author, I can transfer my copyright to another person or another institution, so that whatever royalties I get, I can say that it may be paid to that particular person or that particular institution or that particular society, whatever it is. So if this is transferable, and this part of the copyright law has a time limit also, which, let us say in India, copyright is valid up to 60 years after the death of the author or authors. So only up to that period that would apply. After that it will go into a public domain. So that is one aspect. And second part is the moral rights of the copyright law. Moral rights are authors' personal rights. It deals with matters such as the integrity, attribution, etc. These are unchallengeable rights, right? As an author, that author has the right to be acknowledged as the original founder or the original inventor or the original contributor of that idea expressed as that publication. He had or she had introduced it into the society. So that person has every right to be acknowledged. And this acknowledgement usually comes through, as most of you know, it will come through the citations and referencing, where others who use that words would expressly cite that this is taken from so and so's publication or from such and such publication. So that is done, and it is taken care of through the moral right. These are non-transferable rights. It always remains with the author. Even though the economic side of the copyright can be transferred, the moral rights are not transferable. It always belongs to the author, and there is no time limit. There is no time limit for copyright moral rights of the author, because the intellectual property is the personal right of the author, and there is no expiry. If I have invented a new particular idea and I have expressed it as publication, till the end of this, I have every right to claim its novelty and originality in my name. So that will not expire. So these are the two aspects which you should always remember. We saw that copyright is a privilege enjoyed by the author or the owner of the work, as the case may be. However, some flexibility is provided in the copyright law so that society can meaningfully put these resources into effective use. If everybody will start publishing and everybody lock their materials to say that no one else can use it, then what's the whole point of publishing and what's the whole point of coming up with new ideas, right? So, there is a fair public the right to use a minimum portion of these resources. If the purpose is for non-commercial or non-profit, then it is permitted. For commercial use, it is a strict no, you can't use it. But for non-commercial and non-profit purposes, it can be used. That is the fair use clause within the copyright. This is put in place looking at the larger interest of the society. So we should understand that in education or in research, copyright will not be enforced in its strict sense. That is, the economic rights will not be enforced. The moral rights will always apply. We will look at it from the other half of my lecture when we look at plagiarism. So, but the economic rights will not be applied in its strict sense. Let us say when you step into a library and you are reading a book and you will ask for one particular chapter of that book to be photocopied, librarian will agree and he will give you, right? But on and on, every librarian is faced with a situation when somebody will come into the library and they will say, "Eniki pustakam muzhun copy veanam." So that is when we tell them that from cover to cover, from end to end, a book cannot be xeroxed and provided to you because that is a violation. When you ask for one chapter which somehow comprises of less than 10% of that particular book, there is a fair use clause involved that for education and research, some portion of that material can be used. So to that extent it is allowed. But when you say the entire thing, we will say, sorry, it is not possible. So that is something which you should remember in this particular context. Similarly, in media, whether in print media or as well as in electronic or online media, resources can be used, a portion, a minor minimum portion of resources can be used for news reporting or for commentaries or for reviews or for running criticisms. These publications to a certain extent can be used. This is also keeping in mind the larger interest of the society. Ultimately, even when we say that there is a strict copyright law is in the land and it is enforced, public within the purview of the fair use clause can actually make use of it to a certain extent possible for furthering their research and studies and for their general news reporting and other aspects. So the use part will be served through this fair use clause. That is the idea behind it. We saw that copyright evolved about protecting the rights of the authors, right? But over a period of time, the beginning even though it was that the copyright was with the author, over a period of time what we saw that slowly it started changing hands towards the publishers. And we saw the publishers emerging big and mighty overlords of the publication industry, and they started monopolizing the copyright and they started slowly taking over the entire system of knowledge publication itself. This led to a lot of serious issues. See, we might remember about this Malayalam movie where Dilipineduthu Salim Kumar ചോദിക്കുമല്ലോ കേസ് ജയിച്ചു കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് താങ്ക്സ് മാത്രമേ ഉള്ളൂ പൈസയൊന്നും ഇല്ലെന്ന് ചോദിച്ചതുപോലെ scholars and students will do hard work and they will publish, and the publisher takes the entire copyright based benefits out of the system. And what does the author get out of it? Right? Thanks മാത്രമേ ഉള്ളൂ അല്ലേ? So this led to a very big revolt some 20 years back when against the oppressive conditions of publishers, academia started speaking out, and it led to the birth of a new movement where the basic idea was that it should be free for all. That was the concept behind it. And how it was to be implemented, that there is nothing of course free in this world. Somebody has to make some payment, correct? But these charges of publication or maintaining it would be paid by the author or through the author's institution or through some learned societies, or if it is a project funding, then that project sponsor will make the payment, so that all the users across the world, wherever they are, they could access these resources without paying anything. That was the concept behind it, and we called it open access. That which means that access will be open, while on the publishing side, somebody will have to make the payment, which we call it the APCs, the Article Publishing Charges. That is what it was called. So If someone will just pay for making the material published, then it is open for everybody to use, which will lead to lot of positive changes in the society. That was the concept behind it. And when I say open access, it doesn't mean that we just throw open everything. It doesn't. It is based on a strict law. Just like copyright law, there is a Creative Commons law where all the rights of the author, when I say the rights, the moral rights of the author is protected. And authors are given proper citation and referencing and everything. Only difference is that the economic part is covered where the author, as an author, when I publish in an open access journal, I willingly say that I am giving up my economic rights into this publication so that anybody can read or download or share whatever these publications which I have provided on the internet so that they can make use of it. So the larger interest of the society is always served, and my requirement also served as an author, right? So over a period of time, in the last 20 years, we have seen the birth of quite a large number of open access resources within books or journals or videos or images or data. Let us see. This is a very prominent directory which we call as the directory of open access books. A very excellent resource. The primary aim of directory of open access books is to increase the discoverability of open access publication. However, a lot of publishers have now started providing their books in the open. Like that is on the internet, it will be provided openly for anybody to download and use. Only if you are interested in getting a print copy, you need to pay money and buy that so that the book will be delivered to you through the normal book publishing, book supply channels. That is the difference. So currently, some 43,000 e-books are available, which you can actually go to that website and check it out. And if you are interested, you can download them and you can read them. You can share it with your friends, whatever you want. You are free to do whatever you want with it. That is the concept behind open access. And another initiative is called Project Gutenberg. Project Gutenberg offers about 56,000 ebooks. A very excellent resource of old materials. Sometimes you will not find these materials in most of the libraries. To that extent, you get very old publications also digitized and provided it on this site. Very good place for great literature to download and read. And moving on, journals, in the sector of journals publications, this is a major location where you can check. This is the directory of open access journals, which is an online directory which indexes and provides access to top quality open access publications. All of them are peer reviewed, high standard publications. Currently it has got about 16,000 plus journals in all subjects. So again, you are most free to proceed and go to that website. I have provided the link also. You can check out that. The Public Library of Science is a non-profit publisher. They publish currently about 12 top quality open access journals. Of course, there is one multidisciplinary journal also which is called the PLOS One. Rest of them are very specialized publications in separate subjects. This also is completely free to access and download. So you can actually go to those sites and check out them and see whether you can use it or not. Moving on to multimedia sources. Over a period of time, as your teacher was suggesting, you will be looking at quite a lot of resources for use for your studies, for your teaching, etc. And I believe you will be using YouTube extensively for getting resources. You have an option there when you search the YouTube. You can actually when you give the entry on the search screen, just below that you will see a button called filters. You can see that. And if you just click filters, quite a large number of options will come open, where under the features, if you see on the screen currently it is the fourth column, you can see that update date, time, duration, and the fourth one is features. And under features you have this Creative Commons. If you just click Creative Commons, what will happen is that YouTube will display only videos of your search key term that are available in the open access. So all other closed access strictly copyrighted material will not be shown to you at all. So what you will see will be only materials that are available in the open access. So these materials you can very safely either if you want to download, you can download, or even if you want to share, you can do that. Or if you want to grow, you can look at that. Each video, if you see that, it will say it is available for broadcasting or it is available for sharing, whatever it is. So you are most free to do whatever you want with them, subject to providing acknowledgement and attribution for that. So your requirement will be served there. Similarly, if you go to Google, I believe for preparing for your slides in the class or preparing for your project work or for your thesis, you will be using you will be required to use umpteen number of images, right? And here also you have this option when you go to this Google Images, you have this option when you do the search, under there is an option below the search window called Tools, and within Tools you will see a particular option for usage rights. If you just click the usage rights, it will show Creative Commons license. So you can just select that. Similar to the YouTube, here also once you select the Creative Commons license, what happens is that you will get only images that are available in open access. So these are extremely safe for you to use. You can download them and you can use it for your teaching as your slides, or you can use it on your brochures or prospectus, or you can use it for your notes, you can use it in your projects or dissertations, wherever. Nobody will come and say that you have violated copyright. No, because it's available under Creative Commons license in the open access, and it promotes maximum sharing and maximum usage of the resources, subject to attribution, which I keep repeating every time. You have to give attributions, definitely. You should say that I have got this from this particular source. That citation and referencing at the end of the material should be there. Another resource which for images, I believe, which you can use is the Flickr. I believe you will be using Flickr also very extensively, isn't it? So in Flickr also, when you give your search term, just below that you have this option called any license. So if you just, it's a drop down box actually, so if you just select any license, it will give umpteen number of options there, where you can select the Creative Commons license. And what happens again is that under Flickr also you will see only those resources that are available. So it's very safe for you to download and access them and use them. So of course I have given, there are umpteen number of other examples also. I just selected a few of them so that you can start searching them. It may be that the material that you are looking for, you may not find it here. You can go back to Google, search, and then search for open access materials or Creative Commons license materials. You will find quite a lot of materials available. From there you can select the resources that you want to use. So always remember this. let us have taken one example for data also. Of course, just like journals and books and other data is also important, and data also is copyrighted. So now these days, open data platforms have started coming up where people are sharing their data. For scholars, we have the ICSSR data service where you can, after your PhD work and you have collected umpteen number of field data, you can actually collect them and put it into a proper structure, and you can actually deposit it with ICSSR data service so that it will be available openly for everybody to use. And of course, they will also provide citation for you for using your data also. This is one platform called Open Government Data, which is an initiative of Government of India, which was launched some 5 years back. It's a platform for supporting open data initiative. A very excellent platform where you will get the data which is collected and stored and provided by various ministries and departments and their organizations within the Government of India. You will get data sets, documents, services, tools, quite a large number of resources are available in this platform. So I have just taken some selection for you, that's all. To conclude, always remember whatever resource you are using, check the copyright information of those resources before you use them, and don't get into trouble later on to say that it has been a violation of copyright. No. So that you should always remember, and try to use open access resources more and more. Wherever possible, let us say you have a choice, you want to do something and you see that there is a copyrighted material available and there is an open access material available, always go for the open access resources so that there is no risk in that. Because you are, the author or the person who is holding the right has given you the freedom to use those materials. And as an author, always be aware of your rights. Nobody should violate your rights also. And never infringe upon others' rights. So it's a two-way process. That when you go to library and ask for a cover-to-cover photocopy, remember that that particular author is losing royalty for one book which is not sold there. Right? When a librarian makes a photocopy of end-to-end a book, or rather you borrow that book and you take it outside to some photocopy shop and take cover-to-cover photocopy, one copy of that book is not sold, and that author has not received its royalty, who has done the hard work of writing that book, right? Tomorrow it can happen to you also as an author, that when you will write a book and librarians will buy that book and keep it in their libraries, some other scholar will come and borrow your book and take it outside and take a cover-to-cover photocopy. What will happen is that you will lose one book's royalty, isn't it? So that is something which you should remember. So ideally, never infringe upon the copyright. These symbols what you see, on the top what you see is a copyright symbol. I believe all of you know that. And what are the 4 symbols that you see at the bottom? The left one, which is an inverted C, what you see, that is called the copy left, which was an earlier movement which started some 40-45 years back, where willingly these computer programmers deliberately and revolting against the oppressive conditions of copyright, they started coming up with a different system called copy left. That again was also a law. It's a license to say that this computer program, this software that I am writing is fully under copy left license, and anybody can use whatever they want with it. The next one what you see is there is a slash across the symbol C, which is actually public domain symbol. That the material that I am putting up is on the public domain and people are free to use it. And Creative Commons symbol, you have seen that it's a CC, which is a Creative Commons symbol, and open access symbol has now become very famous, which is the lock, which is in the open position. So it is unlocked for you to use. That is the concept behind it. Now we will move on to the next one about plagiarism. Ethics is fundamental to education and research and publishing. And academics should always remember that it's a dishonest practice to steal from another work. Maybe that you might escape uncaught. Nobody would know whether you have actually plagiarized or not. That's a different story altogether. But you yourself should ask your conscience which is ethical and which is unethical. And to say that it is a dishonest practice that I steal from another work, right? So always give proper attribution to someone else's works that you are borrowing. And this attribution is usually in the form of a citation in your publication and the end of the publication reference. The academic ethics principles always demand that there should be proper citation and referencing in publications, so that any reader would immediately understand that these portions are taken from external sources. When authors use external words or expressions or data or image or any other material and claim it as their own, then it becomes plagiarism. That is the concept. And there are different instances of plagiarism which might occur, sometimes by mistake also. You may not actually deliberately indulge in plagiarism, but by mistake it can happen. That you are copying a large portion of words from another journal article. Because you are writing a journal article which you have to submit for publication, and you are writing a 2000 words article. What happens is that when you search the internet, you see a excellent article, you download it and you take some 1000 words from that and paste it into your article. What happens is that 50% of your article is from an external source, isn't it? So that is something which you should try to avoid. Copying large portion of materials from an external source. That is not allowed. And second, as instances of failing to put quotation marks or indentations or whatever it is. See, you take an external material, it is compulsory that it should be shown separately. That a normal reader would immediately understand that this portion is from an external source. So to indicate that, either you should put a quotation mark on both ends, or there should be a proper indentation, so that within the text that indentation would show that this is a different portion and that is from another source. And another instance is missing of citations and references. People sometimes forget to give citations. They might take words or paragraphs from some other publication and use it in their own work, but they will not give citations or they will not give references. That also should be strictly followed, that any material you take from an external source, it should be immediately followed by the citation of that source. I mean, all of you are aware of the forms of citations where you can either put the last name of the author and then the year and put it in a bracket, or there will be a number system where from the beginning of your work you start putting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for every citation, and at the end of your publication you will give the detailed record about that particular external source, correct? So this is the details about citation and reference. And sometimes what happens is students would copy material from, you have to submit an assignment. What do you do usually? Just the teacher said you have to submit something on the recent floods in Kerala in 2018. What do you do? Just go to Wikipedia and do a search. Whatever you find, just copy and paste it into your Word file. Then what you do is right click every third word, and you will have the synonyms, and you change the words there, here and there, here and there, so that it will look as though it's your own publication. Remember? That also should be avoided. And one more instance which we see is self-plagiarism. You are working on your thesis, and what happens is you have published the journal article on almost the same topic. So what you do is you take that journal article and you put it in your thesis and you develop that. That also is not possible. Or rather, you have already published a journal article and you are trying to publish another journal article. What you do is you take the previous one and then you make changes here and there and submit as a new journal article. That is also not allowed. That is also considered as plagiarism. So, we have the advances in technology now, which allows checking for plagiarism using software tools. There are paid software tools such as Turnitin, Urkund, etc. These are used by your degree awarding institutions, universities, etc. It works under the principle of what we call as similarity. It checks for the similarity between the database of that software and the document, that is, author's document is compared to a database prepared by these companies, and a report of that similarity is generated out, which will show you that so much percentage of this particular document is from these and these sources. So which shows that it is very clear this much portion is plagiarized. And details of those publications are also provided in the report. So this is commercial tools like Turnitin or Urkund or Authenticate, etc. These are very authoritative sources which are very reputed softwares which are used by universities and your degree awarding institutions. And it is now compulsory that for every scholar all their dissertations should be checked by the university librarian before sending it for the awarding of your PhD thesis. From the scholar side or from faculty also, you can check for plagiarism on your own also. For personal use, there are some free software available in the market, which also you can use. This is some screenshots of Turnitin software. What happens is it comes with a login ID and password for your librarian. And what they do is they take the Word file. They will ask you to submit your thesis or dissertations in a Word file, Word document, which is uploaded, and system will generate the report. You can see this, it will show you what is the percentage of similarity which is found. This is the concept. Urkund also, the concept is the same, where there is a database at the back end, and the document that is uploaded for checking will be compared with that, and a similarity report will be generated and provided to the scholar. But this happens at the end of your PhD career, right, when you are about to submit. But you may not actually wait till then also. As and when you write, you might finish, let us say 500 words or 1000 words. As and when you finish writing, you can actually check for plagiarism later on. Or rather, you are working on a journal article to submit. As and when you finish writing, you can actually check for that, for plagiarism on your own. using these free software. These are just some samples of free software. These are not only the free softwares available. Quite a large number of others are also available. But these are not very authoritative sources for checking plagiarism. It is just let us say if you compare a document in one of these sources and later if you compare the same document using Turnitin or Urkul, the percentage may completely vary. So that you should be aware of. So this you can use only for your guidance to check whether plagiarism has occurred or not. The percentage wise may not really work out properly. That is what I should caution you. First of all, your idea is to check whether plagiarism has occurred or not. What is the percentage of plagiarism is a secondary question. So this will help you to first identify whether plagiarism has happened or not. So if it has happened, then you should rewrite the portion of document which you have checked. And the features wise and all are limited in such free softwares. Sometimes they don't give output in separate with percentage wise reports or something like that. And if the database that it has got are not that strong as commercial paid softwares for plagiarism checking. And sometimes it comes with a word limit. Some free software will allow you to check only up to 1,000 words at a time or 2,000 words at a time. You can't use them just like Turnitin or Urkund or Authenticate where you can check up to 200-page document in a single go. That may not be possible using these free softwares. As I said, UGC is very strict about academic integrity. And in 2018, they published this UGC Academic Integrity Act, where plagiarism was taken up very seriously, and it was specified that external use of information in theses and dissertations should be only up to 10%, not more than that. Now, more than that is not at all allowed. So author will have to, the scholar will have to rewrite the PhD thesis. So that is what was explained about it. So having said that, how do you actually handle this issue of plagiarism? How can you avoid plagiarism from occurring? First and foremost is your literature search should be very thorough, and whatever you find as relevant for your research, you should conduct an in-depth reading of those literature. Just skimming through journal articles and taking words from here and there should not be practiced. So thorough literature search and in-depth reading of those relevant literature should be practiced. And copying from external sources as little as possible. Let us say you are building up your argument on some point, and you have seen from that particular journal article a peculiar paragraph which you would like to quote, and that is 20 words. But it may be possible that the way you are writing your argument, just 5 words is sufficient to give the meaning of that entire paragraph. Then use only that 5 words. There is no need for you to copy the entire 20 words and then put the citation based on that. Not required. If 5 words will signify the meaning, use 5 words instead of 20 words. So the law of parsimony is something which you can always remember, right? Take external sources as little as possible and use quotation marks and indentation for all external resources. Use compulsorily, you should remember that. Any material you take from outside, it may be your own publication. We looked at it also as self-plagiarism. So, any material, you are working on your thesis or you are working on a journal article or you want to submit a conference paper, anything you are working on. Beyond that, you take any material, all of them are external sources. And wherever you are using it, use quotation marks when you take words from them, and always remember to give proper citation and references. Citation should be very clear based on whichever format, the AP or Chicago style, or whichever style of citation style we are following. Citation should be very clear to show the last name and the author and the year of publication, or the number-wise citation, whatever it is. And the references should be very clear to give the complete information about the external source that you are using. It should contain the author's name, the title of the publication, the year of publication, the publisher's name. Whatever the reference citation style says, you should provide the entire data. If it is a journal, then the author's name, the title of the journal article, the journal's name, then the volume number, then the issue number, then the particular pages, then the year. And if it is an online resource that you're using, you can give the URL link to the journal article. So the idea here is that anybody looking at your publication would be very happy to see that you are a person with utmost integrity, and that whatever you write, you will never plagiarize, and any expression that you have taken from an external source is always acknowledged in its due form. And last but not the least, develop your own writing style. There is no need for you to take words from Wikipedia and others. First of all of you are college students, stop using Wikipedia altogether. Gone are the days. Wikipedia is for normal common people, for getting some basic idea about things. Beyond that, Wikipedia is not to be used in academia at all. So stop using that, and always use Google Scholar for searching. Stop using Google. Google search will not work for you. Use only Google Scholar, or rather what we call as scholar.google.com. Now, develop your own writing style. It may be difficult in the beginning, but don't worry about it. Keep on writing. It may be that initially whatever you write, it will be very difficult. Words may not come to you very smoothly. Whatever you write may not be readable. Don't worry about those things. Keep on trying. See, none of us, or rather whatever you see, all these great writers around you, nobody really start writing in the perfect way from the first day itself. No, all of us were practicing it. So, and now that you have umpteen number of resources available, you just go to YouTube and give academic writing. You will see hundreds of videos available for you where you can learn step-by-step writing. If you want to write a book review, just check, you will see at least 100 videos for that. Or if you want to write a journal article, so there are step-by-step methods of resources available which will teach you academic writing. So watch them and spend some time to learn that and develop your own writing style and adapt it as much as possible, so that nobody will later on start creating issues that you have plagiarized or you have copyrighted, you have violated copyright, etc. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, for sharing a few thoughts with you. Any questions you have, I will be happy to answer it now, or my contact details are also there. So in case you would like to need some clarifications, you can do that later on also.
Thank you, sir. എന്തെങ്കിലും സംശയങ്ങളുണ്ടെങ്കിലും ചോദിക്കാം.
In the chat box, I have given a link. This is the link to my blog page where I have uploaded all my teaching resources. You can see at the top itself, today's event is listed out where the PowerPoint is given. You can always check that later on. If you want, you can download and use it also for later on clarifications. Okay, so any questions?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So, despite being aware that plagiarizing is actually an academic dishonesty, students actually often tend to commit the same. Sir, according to you, how would you comment on this problem among students? Is it because they actually lack and proper awareness on copyrights?
Very difficult to answer that. See, first of all, it is the awareness issue, right? That what you can take and what you can't take is something which first of all you should understand. And if you can take, how much you can take and how much you cannot take, that also you should understand. So in your higher studies itself, you will fall into that pattern and you will understand that this is a dishonest practice which you should somehow try to avoid at any cost. So once you learn that, it will become an ingrained habit with you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Good evening, sir. Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Sir, myself is Rashmi, Assistant Professor of Economics.
Yes.
Sir, I have a doubt and I want to ask you a question, sir. Sir,
Yes.
when you're writing thesis, it's a part of our life. Writing
Yes.
articles and writing PhD thesis or correcting, doing some works for our students, all become part of life. And the most definitely we have to depend other sources, namely data sources or other journals articles for while we are doing our work. So the most important problem they are facing is the plagiarism, as you said, sir. So can you recommend any reliable software or website so that the writer itself can check the plagiarism? Or
Yeah, that's what I have shown that in the presentation. There are 5 or 6 good free sites are there where you can check plagiarism. It will give you some indication. It may not sometimes show from where this copying is there, similarity is found, but at least it will show that this much portion from what you have uploaded is available already on the internet, and so this is a copy. So that much facility is available. You can check that. I have given the link on the chat box of the presentation which I used today. So you can check and you can use some of those sites. But please remember, it is not a very, let us say, it's not a 100% authoritative site. That is only, of course, available with universities where they buy a commercial software and use for checking plagiarism. But free softwares, it might give you some indications. You can use it just as a guidance to see whether plagiarism has occurred or not. But ultimately, it is the awareness that you create among students that will be much more easier to work on.
Okay, sir. So I could attend the entire discussions. That's why I asked you this question.
That's why you can use that. On the chat box, I have given you a link which will take you to my blog where I have uploaded all the lectures that I have done. And the topmost is today's lecture. It will give you the link for the PPT. You can open that link on the SlideShare application and you can go through the presentations. My contact details are also there. So in case you want any additional information, please feel free to write to me.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
സാർ ഒരു ഡൗട്ട് ചോദിച്ചോട്ടെ. നമ്മുടെ അൺപബ്ലിഷ്ഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള വർക്ക്സ്, അൺപബ്ലിഷ്ഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഇപ്പം നമ്മുടെ യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി ലൈബ്രറിയിലുള്ള തീസിസ്, കോൺഫറൻസിൻ്റെ അബ്സ്ട്രാക്ട്സ്, നമുക്കറിയാവുന്ന നമ്മൾ കോൺഫറൻസിൽ കൂടെ ആയിട്ട് പ്രിപ്പയർ ചെയ്തിട്ടുള്ള നമ്മൾ പ്രിപ്പയർ ചെയ്ത മെറ്റീരിയൽസ്, അപ്പോൾ അതിനൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ സൈറ്റ് ചെയ്യുമ്പം അതിനകത്തും കോപ്പിറൈറ്റ് ഇഷ്യൂസ് വരാറുണ്ടോ? ഓൾറെഡി അതെങ്ങനെ സൈറ്റ് ചെയ്യും?
തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും വരും. അൺപബ്ലിഷ്ഡ് ആണെങ്കിലും സി ഇപ്പം ബേസിക്കലി ഇപ്പൊ തീസിസ് ഞാൻ ചോദിച്ചു, പക്ഷെ തീസിസ് ഇപ്പൊ ഗ്ലോബലി ഓൾ ദ തീസിസ് റെപ്പോസിറ്ററീസ് ആർ ബീങ് ഓപ്പൺഡ് അപ്പ് ഫോർ പബ്ലിക്. If you take the case of India, I believe all of you are already aware of the Shodh Ganga, which is an initiative of Ministry of Education, Government of India, which is done through the UGC. So it's compulsory that whenever a scholar is submitting the thesis, one copy of it is given to Shodh Ganga and it will be uploaded immediately on the internet. So even if it is unpublished in its strict sense, it is available openly for anybody to check. And conferences mostly these days have become open conferences. So whatever material that we submit, the conference papers, everything is being made available openly. Open conferences has become a norm these days. And any lectures these days are all recorded and uploaded on the YouTube, or if it is an audio lecture, it is uploaded on a podcasting site. So we are increasingly moving on to a well-connected world where something, even when it is saying unpublished, it is still available openly for everybody. So in that sense, there is a high chance that people might use it to their own purpose. So that is something where we have to make people aware of that. You can use these materials, but you should provide citation. Of course, it may be possible that you have looked at an old conference paper in the university library which is not available anywhere else, but then you should still cite it to say that this material is unpublished resource. So even at the end of your references, we will say that it is unpublished. We will give the details of the conference and then say it is unpublished paper. Then people would know that this is unpublished and then they have to go to the nearest university library. By chance they might get it. That's possible. If it is an online resource, let us say Shodh Ganga, and then if you are using the, maybe you can actually cite that thesis and give the URL of that thesis which you get it from Shodh Ganga itself. And online, everything wherever mostly comes with a unique URL, so you can give the link itself, so that all those issues of copyright violation will not occur.
സർ, അങ്ങനെ വെബ്സൈറ്റിൻ്റെ URL കൊടുക്കുമ്പോൾ ആക്സസ് ഡോൺ എന്ന് പറയുന്നതിൻ്റെ കോപ്പിറൈറ്റുമായിട്ടാണോ? ആക്സസ് ഡോൺ എന്ന് നമ്മൾ ഡേറ്റ് സ്പെസിഫൈ ചെയ്യാൻ പറയുന്നത് കോപ്പിറൈറ്റ് ആൻഡ് പ്ലേഗറിസം ഇഷ്യൂ ചെക്ക് ചെയ്യാനാണോ?
ആക്സസ് ഡോൺ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് അതൊരു ഇൻഡിക്കേഷനാണ്. When did you actually last access it? So that later on there might be a dispute. Let us say we are looking at a dynamic website. Maybe for journals and all it may not work out, but let us say let us take a very basic information. You take a website, there is a statistic provided there that Kerala has 14 districts. But it may be possible that when you look at the kerala.gov.in, today it will say 14 districts. May be possible that next year there is a new district coming up, and the year after that, when somebody reads your paper, they will say that you have put it like 14, but now it shows it's 15. So you can actually say that I have given the link and I have shown it that it was accessed on this particular date, and at that particular date this was the statistic. So you are actually covering yourself, and your point is that when you looked at the site, this was the data that was available. It's possible, right? Isn't it, madam?
യെസ് സാർ, യെസ് സാർ. സർ, ആർക്കൈവ്സ് സൈറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നതിന് എന്തെങ്കിലും ഒരു പ്രത്യേകതയുണ്ടോ സാർ? ഈസ് ഇറ്റ് ഓൺലൈൻ ആർക്കൈവ്സ്?
Yeah, see, as I said, like increasingly more and more resources are being provided on the internet, and these archives have come up in a very novel way. That, as I said, we looked at the opposition that has come up from academia, that the monopolistic publishers are actually fleecing the system by charging more and more and all, so that people started writing and publishing open access publications. So open access publications gives one more additional benefit, that if author wants, author can actually self-archive materials whatever we have submitted. And for self-archiving, independent archives have come up in the last 20 years. You can There are quite a large number of archives. In economics, I believe all of you have heard about the REPEC, the Research Papers in Economics Archive. Then we have the personal archive called MPRA, the Munich Papers REPEC Archive. Then there is the ArXiv, ARXIV, which is a very popular archiving site. Quite a large number of such standard archiving sites have come up, where either the institution of the author or sometimes the author themselves can self-archive other publications, so that it is put up there for public viewing and for use. So when you use archive also, the citation is very clear that this is a stage of publication where you have actually submitted it either before its formal publication. So you can cite it as this resource is available in this particular archive and this is the URL to it. That is very clear. So that for a reader will understand that this is taken from an external source which is located in that particular location. That's clear.
സർ അതുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് പിയർ റിവ്യൂഡ് ജേർണൽസ് ഇതുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധമില്ലെങ്കിലും നമ്മൾ ഈ ആർക്കൈവ് നമ്മൾ ഈ പിയർ റിവ്യൂഡ് ജേർണൽസിന് ഈ ഏകദേശം ഇതായിട്ട് വരാറുണ്ടോ സർ റെപ്പെക്കും എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ എങ്ങനെയാണ് അതിന് ഗ്രഡേഷനിൽ പെടുന്നതാണോ ഈ ഓപ്പൺ ആക്സസ് ജേർണൽസും അതുപോലെ തന്നെ കോമൺ റിസോഴ്സസ് ആയിട്ട് വരുന്നത്?
Open access as well as closed access, all these journals are peer reviewed content, and by law, author has right to one copy of their publication. Even if you publish your article in a highly reputed journal, and even if it is a closed access journal, you have right to one copy of it. And that copy will be either a preprint. Preprint means the first draft which you send to the publisher for printing. That is called preprint. And there is something called post-print author version. Post-print author version means after sending the preprint, the publisher will give it to the editor. Editor will read it and editor will assign a peer reviewer for that article. The reviewer will read the article and give comments. That comments will be sent by the editor or publisher back to the author, and author will make corrections of the preprint based on those comments and will send it back to the publisher or editor again. That particular version is called post-print author version. And either that or there is one more version which is called the post-print publisher version, which is the final version which is published on the journal. That is after the post-print author version, what happens? Of course, in the journal, the reviewers comment, it will go back to the editor. Editor will assign it to an editorial team. They will read through and finally check for language errors and everything and all. Once those corrections are made, it will go for the formatting and typesetting and layout and everything. And once that is done, neatly this paper will go for final publication. Right? That version is called the post-print publisher version. So these are the three versions available. One is the preprint, second is the post-print author version, and third one is the post-print publisher version. And different publishers has given different rights to the author for self-archiving. You can either self-archive a preprint or a post-print author version, or sometimes even if it is a open access journal, they are very happy that you can even self-archive the post-print publisher version, because it is always available freely on the internet, so you can always download and share it with whomever you want. So you can self-archive with that also. So in method, you can choose to decide, the publisher will tell you which version author is having the freedom to self-archive. So you can self-archive that version in a publicly available archive, or you can self-archive it in your own website if you have, or you can archive it in your digital library of your institution. So wherever you want, you can use it. But it all is subject to again this restriction of copyright that we should remember. So this version, whichever out of these three, and then the publisher will stipulate an embargo period. That if it is a quarterly, I will say I have an embargo of 3 months. So if it is published in July, then only in October that author can self-archive it. For checking these policies, these are editorial policies. If I just tell you often, it might sound sometimes very confusing to you all. So just check the website of Sherpa Romeo. Just go to Google and search SHERPA, Sherpa Romeo, ROMEO, Romeo. This is an excellent initiative where you will see the policies of publishers about self-archive.
ഓക്കെ താങ്ക് യു സർ. സർ എന്തെങ്കിലും ഒരു രീതിയിൽ നമ്മൾ ഓൺലൈൻ പബ്ലിഷിങ്, അതായത് ഇപ്പം EPWയിൽ ഓൺലൈനായിട്ടുള്ള നമ്മൾ പ്രിൻറ്റിൽ വരാത്തതും ഓൺലൈനിൽ കാണും. അപ്പോൾ അതിലെന്തെങ്കിലും ഒരു വേരിയൻസ് ഉണ്ടോ കോപ്പി റൈറ്റിംഗിൽ? വെൻ വി ആർ ടേക്കിംഗ് ഇറ്റ് ദ സെയിം ബൈൻഡിങ് ആണോ റൂൾസ് എല്ലാം? The print for the printers and
it might vary from publisher to publisher. Your point is correct. See, the format of publishing is coming up in a very different way. It's what we call as a disruptive technology is now coming up. Even the concept of volume and issues have been discontinued by certain publishers. If you go to PLOS, we saw the open access publisher PLOS. PLOS never followed the strict sense, the volume number, issue number system. They just give you an article number. So, because why is it so? Because several open access publishers have discontinued printing the journals. It's only available in the open. So you have additional benefits to it. So in that sense, these questions sometimes vary from publisher to publisher. Some publishers would say that we have an embargo, some publisher will say that you are free to use it. So ideally we should go to each and every publisher and check what exactly is their copyright restriction to understand. This particular question about EPW has a print version, and currently in the last 1 or 2 years they have come up with a web exclusive, which is a different type of journal article also. Those in every issue there will be some 4 or 5 articles which are actually not printed but which are available only on their website. But citation wise or copyright wise, it remains the same with EPW. They are of course very happy. So they are not very restrictive in that sense. So we can actually cite them just like we are citing a print journal. You can give the citation by author and title of the journal article and say give the journal as Economic Political Weekly and say that this is the web version of this particular date. That's it.
Thank you, sir. That was very clear. Questions എന്തെങ്കിലും ഉണ്ടോ? ലീന ടീച്ചർ?
Hello, am I audible to you all?
Yes, teacher.
Yes, madam.
Okay. എല്ലാവർക്കും നമസ്കാരം. ഗവൺമെന്റ് KNM ആർട്സ് ആൻഡ് സയൻസ് കോളേജ് സംഘടിപ്പിച്ച IQAC സംഘടിപ്പിച്ച ഇത്രയും മനോഹരമായ അർത്ഥസമ്പുഷ്ടമായ ഒരു പരിപാടിയുടെ ഭാഗമാകാൻ കഴിഞ്ഞതിൽ എനിക്ക് വളരെ സന്തോഷമുണ്ട്. അപ്പൊ ഇതിൽ നിക്ഷിപ്തമായിരിക്കുന്ന ഒരു കർത്തവ്യം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഇന്ന് ഇവിടെ പങ്കെടുത്തിരിക്കുന്ന എല്ലാവർക്കും പ്രത്യേകിച്ചും നമ്മുടെ റിസോഴ്സ് പേഴ്സണും നന്ദി പറയുക എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു ടോപ്പിക്ക് ഇത്രയും സൂക്ഷ്മത ഒട്ടും ചോർന്നു പോകാതെ, എന്നാൽ ഇത്രയും ലളിതമായിട്ട്, ഞങ്ങളുടെ കോളേജിൽ അധികവും UG കുട്ടികളാണ് ഇതിൽ പങ്കെടുത്തതിലും. എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നൊരു 30% കുട്ടികൾ UG കുട്ടികളായിരുന്നു. അവർക്ക് പോലും ഒരു ക്ലാസ് അറ്റൻഡ് ചെയ്യുന്ന പോലെ ഇത്രയും ഡീറ്റെയിൽഡ് ആയിട്ടാണ്, അറ്റ് ദ സെയിം ടൈം വളരെ സിമ്പിൾ ആയിട്ടാണ്, എന്നാൽ സൂക്ഷ്മാംശങ്ങൾ ഒട്ടും ചോർന്നു പോകാതെ ഇത്രയും മനോഹരമായിട്ട് ഈ ക്ലാസ് കൈകാര്യം ചെയ്ത സാറിന് ഹൃദയത്തിന്റെ ഭാഷയിൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ കോളേജിന്റെ പേരിലും എന്റെ വ്യക്തിപരമായ പേരിലും ഞാൻ നന്ദി പറയുന്നു. ഈ പ്രോഗ്രാമിന്റെ ഭാഗമായി നമ്മുടെ കോളേജിന്റെ പ്രിൻസിപ്പലും ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ടീച്ചർ ഞങ്ങളുടെ എല്ലാ പരിപാടികൾക്കും എപ്പോഴും, ജ്യോതി ടീച്ചർ പറഞ്ഞത് ഒട്ടും കൂടുതലല്ല, ടീച്ചർ ഒരു ബാക്ക് ബോൺ ആണ്. എന്ത് പ്രോഗ്രാം നടത്തുന്ന കാര്യം പറഞ്ഞാലും ടീച്ചർ വളരെ സന്തോഷത്തോടെയാണ് ആ കാര്യങ്ങളിൽ പങ്കെടുക്കുന്നത്. മാത്രമല്ല ടീച്ചർ തരുന്ന സപ്പോർട്ടും വളരെ വലുതാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ടീച്ചർക്ക് ഈ തരുന്ന സപ്പോർട്ടിന്റെ പേരിൽ ഇതിന്റെ ഭാഗമായി ഈ പ്രോഗ്രാമിന്റെ ഭാഗമായി വന്നതിൽ ടീച്ചറിനും നന്ദി അറിയിക്കുന്നു. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ പല ഡിപ്പാർട്ട്മെന്റിൽ നിന്നും മിക്കവാറും എല്ലാ ഡിപ്പാർട്ട്മെന്റിലും നമുക്ക് പാർട്ടിസിപ്പേഷൻ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ടീച്ചേഴ്സ്, ഹെഡ് ഓഫ് ദ ഡിപ്പാർട്ട്മെന്റ്സ് എല്ലാം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അവർക്കും ഹൃദയത്തിന്റെ ഭാഷയിൽ നന്ദി പറയുകയാണ്. ഇതിനെല്ലാം ഉപരിയായിട്ട് ഈ പ്രോഗ്രാമിനെ ഒരു വിജയമാക്കി തീർക്കാനായിട്ട് നമ്മുടെ കുട്ടികളെ, റിസർച്ച് സ്കോളേഴ്സ് മാത്രമല്ല, UG ലെവലിലും PG ലെവലിലുമുള്ള കുട്ടികൾ അവരുടെ ഒരു ആക്റ്റീവ് പാർട്ടിസിപ്പേഷൻ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. നല്ല ലിസണിങ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. ഡെഫിനറ്റ്ലി അവർക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും ഈ ഒരു സെഷൻ വളരെ പ്രയോജനകരമായി തീർന്നു എന്ന് തന്നെയാണ് ഞാൻ വിശ്വസിക്കുന്നത്. എല്ലാവർക്കും ഒരിക്കൽ കൂടി നന്ദി പറഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ട് എൻ്റെ വാക്കുകൾ നിർത്തുന്നു. നന്ദി.
ഓക്കെ സർ, താങ്ക് യു സർ. നമ്മൾ എന്തെങ്കിലും കുട്ടികൾക്ക് ആവശ്യങ്ങളുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ നമ്മൾ സാറിനെ കോൺടാക്ട് ചെയ്യാം സർ.